Why is it that we say so many lies during our lifetime? And how come that we still have a part in us that is always seeking the truth? You know, the children, kind of when they grow up, they just start lying and they learn that they can tell these things that are kind of not exactly the reality and that they can get away with it. And then we learn through life that it's not just sometimes, it's very often quite a good strategy to not be entirely truthful with a situation so that we can advance, that we have better job opportunities. Same goes for saying things as well as not saying things. Looking the other way. What's going on there? Is the world really that fucked? Is like really everybody lying? Best part is, I know so many people who are allergic to lies, who go like, I'm so truthful, I'm really, really honest about everything. I'm direct, I want people to be direct with me. Well, guess what? Look at their behavior just a little bit closer. Take the magnifying glass and go Sherlock Holmes, and you'll find all the clues that they are also not being truthful. In fact, there's been a book that came out, it's called Vital Lies, Simple Truths, which is kind of describing how everybody has a certain tolerance for lying and how we as human beings are kind of programmed to lie all the time. Not by maybe saying directly a false thing out there, but just by a little bit enhancing the truth. You know what I mean? Like creating a little bit of better kind of opportunity for yourself just by making it sound a bit more nicer, or like you accomplished a little bit more, or just rounding up that number, of what you did. Same thing like goes with hunters, right? They started, or with fishing, the fish was this big and then it got this big, and at a point it's outside the camera. So whatever it is that you have been doing, chances are high that you are lying, not just to other people, but also to yourself. And also, the great thing about that is that you have no idea that you are doing that. Why? Because, again, we want to be good human beings. We want to be able to fall asleep and not feel like we have been scamming someone, like we have been telling not the truth, but kind of trying to be shady or whatever. That's also part of Vital Lies, Simple Truths. They go into looking at why it is that we can tell things that are untruthful and still not feel like we're being dishonest. Apparently there's a little mechanism in ourselves that kind of covers the tracks, that justifies telling that, oh, well, it is the truth, it's just like I used a little bit of different words. They did these experiments with students where they would correct their multiple choice questions in the back. Like they would self-correct their own tests that they took. And people usually scored around 10% higher on these tests when they corrected them themselves. And then researchers went out and found out that these 10% are not actually because people are better, but because they're kind of cheating when they're correcting their test, because they go back to the solutions and then they see like, oh, it was this other thing. Yeah, I actually knew that it was this other thing. I crossed on A by mistake, I obviously I knew it was B. And apparently that makes people score 10% higher. So around 10% of everything that we say, everything that we do, is just embellishment of truth. How does that make you feel? probably not very good. I had a discussion with two of very good friends of mine. I remember distinctly, we went to Italy. We had a wonderful dinner. This was just before we went to sleep. We had some drinks after dinner, and then I kind of started talking to them about these facts, and both of them were like, "No, no, 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 no. Me, I'm very honest. I'm very truthful." And then we kind of really got into an argument. It was very heated and kind of got very, very intense because I was noticing that I kind of poked at their ego. So chances are high that when you hear this, you go like, no, 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 other people do that. They're being dishonest, not me. And why are we doing this? Again, because of the same mechanism. Because it's always these other fuckers doing it, but not myself, because I'm better, because I actually have morals. I am an ethical human being. Here's the fact. You have morals and you are an ethical human being, and you also have this process that covers up the tracks of you being untruthful so that you do not see how you are being lying to others, how you are being manipulative, how you are being dishonest about your intentions, and how you are using situations to your advantage and forming words, forming sentences, forming messages, just so you get to have the better end of the deal. And it's like a cleaning crew. You do that, you are not aware at that moment that you're doing it because you're distracted maybe with something else, or you have like a good intention or whatever it is. And then after you, the cleaning crew comes through, they clean it all up, and then we're done. Like you don't see that anymore. And you feel like everything that has happened was fine. This was a long introduction to the Exaltify Me Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Exaltify Me Podcast. I'm your host, Nenad Leonart, and here we're talking about all the things in depth that are forming our personality, that are changing our identity, that are making us who we are, and how to actually dive deep and discover our true self. Now, in today's episode, I want to talk about lies and mostly about truth. There is no truth without lies, and there's no lies without the truth. So obviously I took the lies in, but I don't want to really focus on those. We did that in the introduction, and you know now like what the mechanism is behind lying. And now I want to focus with you on the true side of things, like why we are not telling the truth, and why we need the truth, and what it does for us, like how it's going to help, and what's the benefits of actually doing that. I'm not necessarily talking about being truthful to others, although this is part of it. The person that we lie to the most is, you guessed it, it's ourselves. It's with all the little things that we say, that we kind of change our thinking just to make life more bearable, just to make it more exciting, just to make it more, the real thing. So let's start out by saying that the truth is actually freeing. And that is why we are seeking it. The more we can get into the truth, the easier it is for us to let go, the easier it is for us to assess the reality of the situation, where we are right now and how we feel right now. The more honest we are to ourselves, the better our life quality will become. The more charisma you will get, because like the relationship to yourself changes. And people notice. And people want to be around these kind of people. Being more truthful will actually make you more attractive. it will free up energy, but it will also, on a very subtle level, display to others that this person is someone who has a really strong character, because they're willing to face their fears around telling the truth. And again, I'm not talking here about going out to people and then telling them something in their face and then they get angry because that wasn't something that they asked for, but you were truthful anyway, and then you get into arguments and then you get to be a dickhead, and it's just not really good. I don't know if you've heard about this thing. I've been listening to it a lot lately. It's called the Second Date Update. It was like a radio show from 10 years ago, and they did these really funny sketches. And it's usually somebody not calling a person back, so they contact the radio show to get a hold of them, and they can understand like what went wrong in the first place, like why aren't they getting a second date. And I remember one episode, these are like really short ones, a couple minutes, and you can learn so much about the people involved. Like, these are usually strong characters. And again, you're not the most normal person when you call a radio show to go and inquire why someone isn't calling you back from a date. So you get all kinds of crazy people and really fun encounters there. And one of these was very remarkable. It was about a woman that was very so-called truthful about the date. So what she was actually doing is she was telling the guy that she was meeting everything that came to her mind, like what kind of bad clothes he was wearing, that he didn't take care of himself, that like if he had a real woman in his life, he would have been looking much different. So she kind of used telling the truth to just unfiltered say everything that came to her mind. And this is definitely not what I am talking about here. Like, that's the stupidest thing you can do. And it's abusing the actual idea of telling the truth and it being freeing. Obviously, it's freeing when you go out there and you kind of just don't use your social filter and you blurt out everything that comes into your mind. But like, everything that comes into your mind, that is super, super ego-centered. And in her case, most of the things that she was saying wasn't even like true facts or something. Like, she was presenting it as facts, but it was interpretations of certain details of the situation so that she could get a benefit out of it. Again, like, she was, in that particular case, she was telling like, oh yeah, you need like a real woman, and then these things wouldn't happen to you. Like, you wouldn't be as messy if you had somebody who was taking care of you. So what that was actually kind of putting them down. It was creating a space of insults. So their self-worth would get lower and lower. And so it would be easier for her to go there and like catch the prey. This is a strategy that most people who are openly pronounced about being truthful, they are using it to be able to give you insults and to actually directly work at your self-confidence. In the name of the truth, they will go ahead and they will put you down so they can feel better in comparison. And that's their game. Make sure to see this when it's happening. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the good truth, about the one that's freeing, and this one starts with yourself. So go always and look back to yourself, like who you are, where you're coming from, and that is going to be what's important. Don't go and use and abuse truth to put others down so you can feel better in comparison. No. now that we've covered this, let's look at why truth is actually freeing, and why, if we're not saying the truth, like what's actually going on behind it. And as you know me, as you know this podcast, let's go and look at it from the perspective of childhood trauma. There's something called as the perpetrator protection program. And it is something that is quite difficult to get your head around if you have never seen this happen to anybody else. Because chances are so high that is really, really difficult for you to see it happen in your life. When we're talking about trauma, we are talking about the things that we have banished into our subconscious, that are kind of locked up there and that we don't want to think about and that we don't really want to look about. So if you're listening to this and you're getting these feelings of danger, and you're getting these feelings of, it could be distrust to what I'm saying. It could be very, very careful attention to the words that I speak, because these words could be evil. Like, if you notice that in yourself, rest assured that that's a part of you that doesn't want you to find out the truth. Everything that I'm saying, it's nothing more or less than just we're supposed to say the truth. There's nothing manipulative about it. There's nothing inherently wrong about it. It's actually something that is going to help you. And yet there's a part in you that listens to this and he goes like, this is evil. Don't listen. They're trying to catch us. They're trying to destroy us. Do you see that in you? Can you feel it happening? Because if you do, it's important for you to understand where it comes from. This is your protection. It's your survival mechanism. It's something that does not want you to find out the truth. It is something that is trying to cover up its tracks. It's something that's trying to kind of change your past in your mind, how you remember it, so you don't have to remember the really painful stuff. And that is important for you to understand. So there's this perpetrator protection program. And what that is that somebody who has done something awful to you, you kind of lock that away, and you don't want to remember that awful thing that happened to you, because you want to still be able to love that person. You want to still be able to just give them everything and stay in relationship with them, because to not do so would be your doomfall. An easy thing to see here, like, it's about the story of, let's say, the woman that goes into different relationships and she's just getting physically abused. And she could leave the relationship, but she chooses to stay and still get abused because she goes into the perpetrator protection program. The person who is doing her wrong, she's protecting them, and she still maintains the ability to love them and be in a relationship with them, even though she has a lot of pain. That's the easy picture to understand. The harder picture to understand is that happening to us when we are kids and with our parents. So that's why I explicitly chose that wording. When we have our parents be the perpetrator, having something happen to us that we don't really want to. And this can be very different kinds of trauma. It can be physical abuse, it can be emotional abuse, it can be sometimes, although that's not really true, so I'm not going to say it, I wanted to say sometimes it's unintentional. Let's not talk about if it's unintentional or intentional. It's just about the abuse that you are experiencing from your parents. And now as a kid, again, you are dependent on your parents for survival. You know that you need to be part of a family, otherwise you're cast out and you die because nobody's going to feed you, nobody's going to take care of you, and you need food, you need shelter, you need warmth, you need love. So you need that from your parents. And if they are doing things to you that are unacceptable, your psyche will just take these things and stuff them down for good, so you don't have to look at them, so you can still love your parents. Makes sense, right? And that's the reason why go ahead and ask anybody you know, how was your childhood? And all of them will say, hey, man, yeah, like my childhood was great. It was really, really good. I mentioned this one book by Neil Strauss where it's also going back to his childhood. And in the beginning, he was like, yeah, I had a great childhood. Like, it was good. And then after a lot of therapy and a lot of sessions, he kind of starts discovering that, no, my childhood was actually really awful. It was like a hellhole. And it's step by step of reclaiming that truth that finally was able to make him free from different sets of behaviors, addictions, and so on that he wasn't really master of in his life. Like, they were controlling his life. And this is why we want the truth. Now, if you have something like that happen to you in your childhood, like your parents not being real good parents as they should be, but kind of doing you wrong, and doing you wrong on a very deep emotional and physical level, you had to split off that part and not remember it. And that is where you're lying to yourself. So in order to truly heal, to find these parts, to reintegrate them, and to recover your energy from the depths of your being, you will kind of have to need and look at this, exactly look at it in its entirety, and tell the truth. Tell the truth to yourself. Everything that happened. The perpetrator protection program. It is protecting the ones that have done us wrong so that we can love them. And you know now why it's put in place. But also know that this protection program is not being good to you. It is distorting reality, it is creating lies, and it is shaping your personality into something that is trying to cope. It's trying to cope with reality because it cannot face the reality how it really is. That's what I mean with truth. Maybe not like the absolute universal truth of everything, but just like your truth, like what happened to you, how it made you feel. Your feeling matter. Everything that you are experiencing inside of you, no matter what the reason for them doing it. Like most people then come, yeah, but my parents couldn't do better because of, or they were forced to do that because ... We're not talking about that. We're talking about the focus on you. The focus what happened to you. How you were not supposed to be in that situation. How you had to take on a role for your parents maybe that you weren't supposed to take, like caring for them. So you cared for your own parents instead of being a child. And so on. So there are many different shades of this. Same goes also with sexual abuse. Many people who undergo sexual abuse as children, they don't really recall these situations because they're just too painful to remember. And guess what happens? They are living a lie. They build everything onto a lie just so they don't have to remember this awful thing. In IOPT, when I work with others, I see how freeing truth can be. I see how when doing a self-encounter and creating this constellation, they can actually have placeholders for their parents and to find out the truth, what happened. They can finally face the truth. They can look it in the face and see what was going on. There's a lot of compassion for themselves then. There's a lot of tears. There's a lot of realization, and it's always this freeing feeling of finally, I found the truth. Finally, I know what has been kept secret all these years, just so I can, quote unquote, survive. And I've also experienced it going into the other direction. So let me tell you also this, when you choose to go down this way, it takes so much of us to actually start telling the truth, to actually face how it was, that there will be feelings of frustration, there will be feelings of anger, there will be feelings of wanting to break out of everything. And once they start coming up, they may also be the ones distorting the truth. Yesterday, I had someone in a self-encounter say that their mother was not a mother to them, but a murderer. Their mother being not a mother to them, but a murderer. And when I asked what they meant by this, they meant, well, she tried to kill me, she tried to have an abortion. And so that's why for me, she's a murderer to me. And I do not see her as my mother. She was not a mother. She was somebody that carried me into this world, but I do not recognize her as my mother. I recognize her as a murderer. And from hearing these words, you probably also can tell this is not truth yet. This went into the other direction of him finally being able to release his perpetrator protection program, but all the pent-up energy, all the anger and just even hatred that was collected there was finally able to explode, and the pendulum swung in the other direction. And now he's kind of saying things that aren't necessarily true. It doesn't matter if he wants to recognize his mother as his mother or not. She is going to always be his mother. The sad reality of the situation is that he had to have a mother like that he didn't have the chance to have a better parent. That's what he got. And in his head, he can create the story of, well, that wasn't truly my mother, but for him as a kid, she was. And also calling her murderer, that's a huge accusation. And yet it's not entirely truthful, because in the end, she did not end up killing him. In the end, what happened was she gave birth to him. So maybe she had the intention of murder at some point, that's what he felt. She maybe didn't even consider this to be murder, if it was in case of an abortion. But nevertheless, like, it's really important to tell his own truth. So if he felt like this was an attempt on his life, then it was an attempt on his life. But calling somebody like that murder, even if it didn't work, it kind of goes into a different dimension. You see, it's going into a dimension of creating accusations that are too strong because of all the pent-up energy and everything that is going on. So let's not also swing the pendulum in the other side, or it's probably going to swing out there. Like when you finally realize how you have been protecting these people in your life that have actually done you wrong, you will get angry. You will get huge amounts of frustration released. And it's going to swing a little bit out. And once it does, release that, go through the emotions, and also realize that it can be very intense and it can be too much. So like, always strive to find the reality. Always strive to look at things how they are. Not go into extremes, not go reacting, and also not go protecting. Just the way things are, because this is ultimately going to free you from having to tell yourself stories, from having to pretend that you're someone that you're not. This will free you to be yourself, be your true self. This is what it's about. Not living a lie, not creating a story, not escape into anything, but to actually just realize how things were in your life, accept them unconditionally, fully, be able to feel all those emotions, all the sensations that are coming up, so that you can find your balance. You get into this wonderful state of equilibrium, and you are more in tune with yourself and the world around you. Hey, I hope you got out a lot of this episode. Do leave me a comment, leave a short review, get in touch if you have some questions. This is the Exaltify Me Podcast, where we're talking about all the things in depth about discovering our true self. My name is Nenad Leonart. I'm your host, and I will see you in the next episode next week. Take care.